It's Wednesday. Time is 8:45, which means it can be only one thing, and that is the Ask TCW podcast, and we're live. Yes, good evening. Thank you very much for joining me, Aaron Lord, and what a podcast we have for you tonight. Lots of questions in discussing next season, the playoff weekend, and then obviously the Steelers statement that came out earlier today. I'm delighted to say that joining me to discuss all of your questions are Tina Taylor.
Hiya.
Andy Haywood.
Evening.
Jono Bullard.
Hello.
And finally, Paul Balm.
Hello.
Good evening, all. Thank you very much for joining me this evening. And like I say, we have got lots to go through. So looking forward to hearing your opinions on all the questions that we've had in. And obviously, if you are listening in to us this evening, then give us a tweet. Let us know. You can get in touch with us using our Twitter handle. It's @CastWhiskersTV, and just use the hashtag AskTCW. Right, let's get cracking on with the questions. And the first one comes from Lee Constable, and this one is in regards to next season, so just bear with me as it's a bit of a long-winded one and it does have two parts. So a question for next season in two parts. It is very much in the dark right now and probably will be until off-season, but with the Milton Keynes Lightning moving into the Elite League, how do you think next season will work? Do you think a 12th team will be added or not? If so, what would the conferences look like? Do you think they may change the conference systems or scrap them? Or will they change the amount of times we play each team? This obviously leads me on to part two. What would you like to see? So, Paul, I'm going to come to you first. Obviously part one, what do you think might happen? And then secondly, what would you like to see happen?
What do I think will happen? Well, basically, I would think it would be difficult for to continue with a two conference system when you've got an odd number of teams.
Yeah.
Obviously, I mean, it's not even as though he's got 11 teams. You could somehow go to 3 in the conference or something. So I think that would be very difficult to do. What would I like? I don't know, because the only thing I can realistically see is essentially a one league system, which I know will be unpopular with a large number of clubs.
Okay, Tina, what's your view on Lee's question?
Well, without really sort of knowing how the maths would work, I'm just wondering if you can have an unbalanced conference, but you obviously have to play cross conference as many times as you play in conference for all the points to sort of add up. I mean, failing that, you've got to scrap the conferences. If the maths doesn't work, then there's no other way around it. I mean, in terms of what I would like to see, a 12th team, I think is probably what I'd be looking for. But where that 12th team is coming from, I do not know.
No, I think that might be the $1 million question if you are looking for a 12th team. Andy, just quickly, your views on Lee's question?
I certainly think for next year it's going to be. I can't see how it's going to work unless it's an odd number of conference, like a 5 and a 6 in the conference, or if they're just going to scrap the conference system. I think from what I can understand, surely the end goal is that there will be another team joining the league. But obviously, if that's not any time soon, then I don't think they can justify keeping the conference system, for 4 years or whatever, while they wait for this other team, if it's not going to work with the odd number. So I think it's difficult. I think ultimately what everyone would like to see is another team join. But I think realistically, what will probably happen is either an imbalanced conference system or no conference system at all.
Okay, and just finally within this question, Jono, I mean, obviously, like Tina says, that 12th team would be ideal, but where do you get that 12th team from?
Well, there was an article that I think it was up in Glasgow tonight that Braehead put out, well, not Braehead, but it was in their local paper, where it's saying that there's an Elite League meeting next week and a 12th team for next season is going to be under discussion. And I think the article mentioned Guildford or a new London team. So it's obviously something that they're looking at, but I think I noticed as well on one of the forums that the timber frames have started to go up at Ellen Road for the Leeds rink, which is the big blue tent where it has been relocated to. So is there a possibility that we could have a Leeds team in the Elite League next season? I think that from what the gist of that article said is they like the conference system and they want to keep it, but it has to be an even number of teams for it to work.
Okay,
I think it's too late in the day now to think that we might see a new team next year.
Yes, because obviously Milton Keynes Lightning was announced at the beginning of this season, wasn't it? And there was obviously a season's grace for that all to be worked out properly behind the scenes, etc. So I kind of agree with you, Andy, that it would be well, I suppose it would be similar to the Manchester Storm, though, wouldn't it? Really, how quickly they would have to get set up and organised. So we have had a tweet in from Glyn, and he says, obviously referring to similar what you just mentioned there, Jono, about the news article retweeted by Braehead earlier, mentioned Guildford or London, like what you said, Jono. So obviously the London franchise has been talked about for a long time, it feels like now. So maybe that could be finally coming to fruition.
Well, I think a lot depends as well what happens in the EPL. I mean, we mentioned Manchester on Monday's podcast. I mean, that's not looking good. And also, well, there's other teams in there. Well, could Guildford come up finally? Well, I guess we'll have to wait and see what happens there as well.
Well, can I just jump in? Sorry, before you move, just as a point to what you said there, Aaron, about Manchester. Manchester were set up so quick, and they didn't do too bad for a debutant season. So, we didn't see that coming. So, what's to say it couldn't happen again? I mean, it's unlikely, but if anybody else with a similar sort of business acumen about them wanted to set up an Elite League team, there's a team that has shown that it, already that it can be done. So, just to throw it out there, as I say, I think it's unlikely, but you can't discount it based on the fact that we have a successful example of it already.
No, I think you make a good point there, Tina, to be honest. So hopefully we've answered your question for you there, Lee, and thank you very much for getting in touch. So we will move on to a question from Dave Arrowsmith. And this one is obviously to do with the playoff weekend. And Dave says, were the Panthers right to release playoff weekend, I'm guessing he means tickets, on a day when so many fans will still be out of the country? Obviously referring to the Continental Cup Super Final that's taking place this weekend in Ritten, Italy. Obviously, people will be travelling back on the Monday as we play late Sunday night. And Dave just finishes his question with, he thinks it's disgusting. Now, I would just say that obviously from my knowledge, this is obviously an Elite League event. And I know Motorpoint Arena, Nottingham, they are the ones that deal with the tickets, etc., etc. So I don't think a lot of the blame, or really any of the blame, can be blamed at the Panthers, apart from they are a member of the Elite League board. But Jono, let's start off with you. I mean, how do you feel about the playoff weekend tickets being released when a lot of fans will still be out of the country?
I don't think it's that big an issue, if I'm honest. I don't think it's that much of a problem. You can ring up and get tickets. I've rang up to get tickets the past 2 years. I haven't bothered. I don't think I've ever got up at stupid o'clock in the morning to queue up. There's always tickets left. There's no bad seats in the arena as far as I'm concerned. I mean, I'm sure Paul will agree with me. When we won the Grand Slam, we were in Block 2, and it's some of the best seats we've ever had, I think, for playoff weekend.
Well, when we won in 2007, we were in sightline seats that were half price.
Yeah. And
they actually did nothing wrong with the view, so they put the prices back up.
Yeah, and I mean, I understand that people want to sit together, etc., or they want their season ticket seats, but come on, yeah, is it really that much of a hardship? I mean, I will phone up on Monday sometime, and I've no doubt I'll get tickets available wherever they are. I am not bothered where I sit, so there you go.
I mean, Tina, this season's playoff blocks. Luckily for us, one of the blocks is the block that we sit in, and we have our season tickets in. So, are you looking to get your season ticket seat, or are you kind of on Jono's wavelength where it's not that big a deal that people might be out of the country?
I suppose it depends on how you feel about where you sit. I mean, for me personally, I'm spoiled. I'll hold my hands up, because of where I sit usually in my season ticket seat. So, I enjoy being that close to the ice. I mean, it's maybe got a little bit to do with the fact I can yell at referees, but whatever. But I don't mind. I mean, my first playoffs, I was in block 18 one day and block 17 the next, because I didn't really know what was going on, and I just sort of bought tickets wherever they were available. I sort of got them. I don't think we made the decision to go until about maybe 2 weeks beforehand. So it was just sort of sit where you can, and I had a great time. But yeah, I'm not really that fussed. I mean, there's my gang I sit with. We sort of have a sharing scenario where one of us will go and get the tickets quite early on. So and if we sit close to the ice, we sit close to the ice. I mean, you and I were on the same row last year, Aaron. So last playoffs. So it's whatever. And I know Jono and Paul were in a different block, and Andy, I've got no idea where you were. But I don't think it matters. I mean, there are people who will buy tickets for playoffs that aren't even in their own block. They'll just sit in the little pockets of the other, the other fans' blocks, because they just want to be there. And I think, playoffs has got that kind of, it's got that kind of atmosphere where you can just do that. So, yes, it's nice to sit with the Panthers fans, and yes, it's nice to get the seats that you want, but you've got to. I understand people's frustrations, because there are some people who want the bang up seats, but you go into Italy. I would love to go. I'd love to be going to Italy this weekend to the Continental Cup, but I can't afford it. I just could not find the money at all. So just but balance it out. You can't. You can try to have it all. And the other thing as well is I don't think this is under the Panthers' control. Like you said, the arena is releasing the tickets when they're told to. I mean, my personal grumble with that is why did they have to wait like 5 days before to announce when the tickets are going to be sold? Why not give people a bit of notice so that they can plan for scenarios like this? I mean, it doesn't bother me. It doesn't bother me personally, but I can understand why people are getting a bit upset about it.
I mean, you mentioned obviously people, they're going to Britain, Italy, potentially, are going to see history be made. Fingers crossed. What I would like to know, and obviously, not many people will be able to tell us, but it would be interesting to see how many people that are going to Italy and Britain, whether they knew that the playoff tickets were going to be on sale on this coming Monday, whether that would have affected their plans of going to Britain, and even potentially cancelling that trip because they have to get their tickets early on Monday. But just a quick reminder of obviously that the playoff tickets for season ticket holders of the Panthers go on sale at 9 a.m. this coming Monday. And as Jono does every season, every year, you can ring up as well. You don't have to queue in the freezing cold as some people do. But we will move on to another question. But thank you very much, Dave, for sending in that one. And this one comes from another Dave, but David, and it comes from David Spence. And he says, what's your opinion on rumours of players missing games and training for uni work? Andy, I'll come to you first on this one.
Well, I'm not going to lie. Until I read that question, I had no idea that was a rumour.
I think just to what I think I'm led to believe that on Twitter, people there's a player of ours who is currently out injured, and there was a suggestion that it was made that it's all to do with uni work, but that's allegedly, obviously.
I mean, don't get me wrong. I know that in the past that players missing training for uni happens. I know that some of them, not necessarily, are almost part-time in regards to training. But I know that in the past, certainly some of them have had like one day a week where they've gone to uni and are not trained with the team. And I think that's almost sort of part of what you get with a uni deal. At the end of the day, we train for the best part of 4, maybe 5 days a week sometimes, and ultimately, if they're at university, there's going to be times when lecture times and training, ice time, conflict, and I think that ultimately you kind of have to accept that almost. But with regards to missing games, I don't think that's right. But then by the same token, I can't think of many situations where it would be a thing.
I mean, Paul, I'll come to you next on this. The uni deals are a big thing in this league. It's what gets the higher caliber of player over here because they want to obviously learn for life after ice hockey. So I think training is obviously very different to missing games. But from a Panthers point of view, you see players that are injured at the rink. So I mean, what's your opinion on these rumours that are apparently out there in social media? Well,
I mean, it's a different balance, a difficult balance even. There is pressure on universities to expand, to provide, amongst other things, to provide more teaching. And I know that lectures, it's no longer what's perceived as an half 10 till 3 o'clock. With a couple of hours off in between existence. I know there can be lectures going on to 5, 6, 7 in the evening, and even starting at 9 in the morning. So there's got to be a balance struck here. I think yes, the university deals are very good. It's a very good incentive to bring people in, but at the end of the day, they've also got to understand that the main focus of what they're here for is to be employed as an ice hockey player, and the university deal is something on top of that. So I think a balance has got to be struck.
Okay, well, thank you very much for your question, Spence, and we will move on to quite a topical question, and it revolves around the Steelers' statement, and this question comes from Jerome Lucy, and he would like to know whether we will be discussing the Steelers' statement on the show tonight. Well, I can tell you, Jerome, we are going to discuss it, but first of all, I would just like to read the Steelers' statement out. It was released this morning from the Steelers' website, and it reads as follows: the Sheffield Steelers would like to advise all our fans that from today our live streaming service will be selective. Due to a growing number of commercial outlets showing our webcasts illegally, the Steelers have decided to show some but not all of the games during the remainder of the season. MD Tony Smith said, "The live streams are a great option for away fans who can't travel and home fans who, for one reason or another, cannot make the game. However, when the live stream starts to affect revenue at our home games, a decision has to be taken." Smith continued, "We will revisit this issue at the end of the season." The Steelers have also made a request to the SSSC to stop selling away travel for the remainder of the season. Again, Smith felt the combination of away travel sales and live streaming could be affecting revenue into the arena. In his match night programme notes tonight, he commented, "I have no concrete evidence the two are affecting our arena income. So for now, I have asked our supporters club not to sell in the arena. Obviously, I cannot stop away travel from continuing, and fans have the choice to organise this themselves. I apologise for any inconvenience or upset that this has caused, but can only do what I feel is right for the club." Now, obviously, social media went wild with this today. Just looking on Twitter at lunchtime, pretty much a lot of people on my timeline that are involved in hockey, or I know through hockey, maybe they're supporters, work in the game, etc., was obviously referring to this statement. So we've had a few questions in regarding this, and I'll just mention a few at the start here, and then I want to bring you lot in to get your views on the statement. But Panthers Banter says Tony Smith, discuss. And Douglas Lafferty says Tony Smith as league chairman has overstepped the mark and should stand down. And then Ray Monaghan says, should Tony Smith's tenure as EIHL chairman be brought to a swift end? Jono, I'll let you kick it all off, but just, generally your opinion on this Steelers statement.
Where do you start? Just where do you start? I mean, I genuinely had to read it 3 times this morning to believe it. I just had to keep reading. I thought, no, this has got to be a joke. And you read it, I read it, and I read it again, and just thought, this can't be real. And
well, it is.
I'm just astonished. I'm absolutely astonished. One. I have no idea. I don't agree with the webcast thing at all. And the thing is, if commercial premises are using it without doing the commercial rates, well, look at your commercial rates, because they're obviously too high. I think the webcast is. I think it. Personally, my opinion is it's a screen for getting more bums on seats in the arena. Very much to the same reasons why we say we don't do a webcast, and we've disagreed with several times and a long time on this podcast. Moving on to the other point about the away travel, how can you, as the Elite League chairman, advocate not your fans not going to away games by taking away a way of them going to away games? You are the Elite League chairman, and you are effectively now taking money out of the pockets of the other 9 Elite League clubs. You have now made your position untenable, in my opinion, because how can the chairman of the league say something like that or do something like that? Do you agree
with Ray that it should be brought to an end?
Yeah, absolutely. He's got to go. How can his position be tenable when he's pretty much advocating that money isn't going to the other 9 clubs, but he wants to keep it within his own? I also think the reasons why would people not going to away games or spending money to go to away games stop people coming to your arena? It doesn't make sense.
Okay, thank you very much, Jono. Tina, I'll bring you in now. Your thoughts on obviously the 2 main parts of that statement, and what it means for Tony Smith in general.
Well, I like Jono says, yeah. Where do you start? It's a massive backward step. Like Jono says, we don't do webcasts, and that's the reasons that Tony Smith is citing are the reasons that we apparently don't do, or it's the main reason why we don't do a webcast. I can't. I'm just struggling to form a proper sentence about it. That's how baffling it is. The part where the live streams are a great option for fans who can't travel, and for home fans for one reason or another can't make the game. But and then later on, he's got no concrete evidence that this is hurting the home sales. I mean, it just that in itself just seems to be a little bit of a contradiction, if I'm honest. And I mean, just to make another comparison between our two clubs, the Steelers have asked the supporters club to stop doing the away travel. Well, the Panthers stopped. Well, they didn't stop the supporters club doing the away travel, but the supporters club no longer exists, and the Panthers brought that travel in house. So that option does still exist, albeit sort of essentially run by the Nottingham Panthers. But it is there, and it sort of feels like he's trying to advocate that you don't go to away games. I can understand from the point of view of him saying, I don't want you to go to away games, I want you to come to the home games. But I don't think it's that simple. I genuinely don't think it's that simple. I mean, I go to a few away games. I haven't been to an away game for what feels like forever because I just haven't had the money. But I've already paid for my season ticket, so if the game's on the season ticket, then I'm going to go. I mean, prime example, I don't have any money, so I probably am not going to be going to the Challenge Cup game. That's because I can't afford it. So it's just, but that's that's the same reason why I'm not going to an away game. So I'm not choosing one over the other. It's just, and I certainly wouldn't go on an away trip. In place of me going to one of my home games that I had to pay extra money for. I definitely wouldn't do that. And I cannot think for 1 minute that there'd be a lot of fans that would do that. I mean, we know one fan who goes to quite vocally. He says that he goes to away games and doesn't go to home games. But I think that is a massive minority. I think that's it's such a big minority. Yeah, and I'm using my words the wrong way around, but it's such a minority that in the scale of the Steelers fan base, it would be maybe one seat. It's just absolutely baffling. I mean, if he's proved right, if it turns out that is that stopping the webcasts and trying to put a blocker on the away travel helps the bums on seats in the Sheffield Arena, then fine, he's been proved right and he's done the right thing. But that's obviously a decision that he is well within his rights to make as the owner of the Steelers. Now, the other thing that I really do want to touch on, because this is the part that absolutely it bothers me to distraction. Webcasts, if there are commercial venues who are, as they say, as they put it, illegally streaming games, then you tell them that they are illegally streaming games. If they continue to do it, you launch legal proceedings against them. If it's anything less than that, then that is just posturing. If it's illegal, challenge it. Go and do something about it. Don't sit on your backside whinging about it. If it's illegal, deal with it.
Okay, thank you very much for that, Tina. Just quickly before we move on to get Andy and Paul's thoughts on this. Obviously, we sent a tweet out this morning asking for thoughts on Tony Smith's statement from Steelers fans, and we've had loads of comments in. I'm not obviously 100% certain that they're all Steelers fans, but it's obviously good to get a mixed view. So just a few of them now. Jonathan Pearce, apart from short-sightedness, pointless and counterproductive, I can't think of any. Biting the hand that feeds you, great idea, said Victoria. Smethurst, Score69 just said shocked, exclamation mark. Gailey277 Gale on Twitter said money bigger than fans. Wolf MVC says he comes across as callous, which is a shame because he isn't. And then finally, just for now, Adrian Lee says, understand from a commercial point of view, but what about Steelers fans who can't make the game for different reasons? I bought webcasts because of illness before, even though I had tickets that went unused. And just a few more questions in regards to the statement. Another one from Ray. Should fans of the other 9 Elite League clubs boycott travel to Sheffield matches in response?
Can I just answer that quickly? From Ray?
Yeah, go on quickly. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I don't think that's the right thing to do. Two wrongs don't make a right. So if you was going to go to Sheffield, don't boycott it because of this. That I think that's a bit petty, to be honest.
Plus, your team would appreciate the away support, I imagine. Undercover Puck says, "Are Sheffield going bust again?" So trying to slow that process down via clutching at straws. And then Helen Bullard, obviously, Jono, your missus, a Steelers supporter, just asks us what our thoughts on the Steelers and the decision to stop away travel sales by the supporters club. So, Paul, I'll bring you next into this. Just your views on the Steelers statement and what it means for Tony Smith and the Steelers in general.
Well, I don't think there's a lot more I can say that hasn't already been said. I think it's mystifying, frankly. Like somebody said, it's cutting your nose off to spite your face. I disagree with what Jono says, though. At the end of the day, what incentive have fans of any other side got to go to Sheffield or to put money into that organisation when their chairman has obviously got a complete and utter disregard for the rest of us?
People have been talking about, when you talk about boycotting, obviously, matches, etc., from other clubs. People have said now, like Steelers fans on Facebook, etc., that they're thinking about stopping buying 50-50 and shirt raffle tickets. So, do you think that's a possibility that that Steelers fans themselves might actually stop spending money within that arena via the 50-50, for example?
Well, it depends how they feel, obviously, but I think it's certainly a no. It's an option that's open to them, and it wouldn't surprise me if there weren't a number that did take it on.
Okay, thank you very much, Paul. Andy, just very quickly, I will obviously bring you in just to round off on this statement. Your views.
Well, I think my first view on the webcast is ultimately I'm not overly bothered by it. On a personal standpoint, I appreciate that a lot of people do watch them, and I appreciate that a lot of people do enjoy them. But from my personal standpoint, I'm still not yet convinced by them. But I think with regards to the away travel thing, what I did notice, I'm really sorry because I can't remember who it was, but I saw post it on Twitter or Facebook. Someone had posted saying the people that are in the supporters club that are getting this away travel that's in the arena have already paid to be in the arena. So I don't understand what and stopping that does. It's not detracting people away from going to the games because they're already there. And they're there to watch the game, and then they're making away day travel plans with the supporters club, and I find it really odd that they're saying that it's because it's they think it might be hampering the match night tickets and the people coming to the games, but they're already in the arena, and obviously with regards to the webcast and obviously the away travel, both of them together. With regards both of them being some sort of saviour as to get more fans through the door, judging by the pictures that are going around tonight, it really hasn't worked. I've seen a couple of pictures on social media tonight, and it's an incredibly sparse crowd at Sheffield. And I appreciate that it's in the middle of January. It's already been a long month for a lot of people that got paid before Christmas. I appreciate that obviously the people have got other things that they need to spend their money on. But it's still an incredibly sparse crowd. And you do have to wonder if it is worrying times, not only for Sheffield but potentially for the league as well, because as much as obviously a lot's made out between how much Sheffield and Nottingham despise each other, of course, we couldn't really exist as well as we do without each other, and I think that it is quite worrying with what's been said and what's going on. I think if they bought it in-house, the away travel, like Panthers did, then I could kind of understand it, as much as it's a bit petty and a bit ridiculous. I could kind of understand it. But the fact that they've offered no options for that, I just think is crazy. And the bit at the end of the statement where it says about all the travel liability and insurance and premiums and all that sort of stuff with regards doing these sort of trips, I mean, I genuinely don't know the answer to this, but are the days of just a few people putting some cash together and hiring a bus company gone?
Well, I suppose with you saying that you don't know the answer to this, I mean, I wouldn't say that has gone, but maybe it has.
I genuinely didn't realise that in order to go watch a hockey game on a coach, that you would have to go through so many hoops, according to what's been put at the end of that statement. Jump on the National Express.
Well, I mean, that's sorry to jump in, but this is what people have been talking about this all day, like I've said, on social media, on forums, etc. And people have said, doesn't bother me, I make my own way, like you guys have said, they're just cutting their nose off to spite their face, etc. So there are obviously many other ways to get to games, and not everybody uses the supporters travel, the away travel, and what the supporters club do. But just to go through some more of the thank you, Andy, for obviously your views on the statement, but just to kind of finish this off, we'll just read through the rest of the tweets that we've had in. So David Kemp says, makes you think Steelers finances are not in as good shape as they should be. And then via Twitter, Daz Shines Bright says, was only last year he was saying attendance numbers were up, parking and booking costs go up at the arena now, sales are low. Problem is obvious to me. I mean, on that, the price to park at Sheffield Arena is ridiculous in my eyes, but there we go. Derek Hosier says, seems no different to previous owners, all about the money, but he seems better at it. His favourite fan is the one he hasn't got yet. Alex Smith says, it's shocking. He has stopped caring about the fans and has alienated a lot of us. All he is bothered about is the money. Douglas Lafferty again says, I hope fans from all of the 9 Elite League teams boycott going to Sheffield games. Hate to say that, but need a sense. So obviously Douglas disagrees with you, Jono, and maybe sides towards what Paul was sort of mentioning. Mick Holland, obviously the retired Nottingham Post journalist, says, can't imagine the other team owners are impressed with Smith, the league chairman, basically telling their fans not to go to away games and instead spend their money at the arena, hoping to make more ready cash with the 50-50 draw perhaps. Helen Bullard, I don't think he realises the bulk of away travellers are season ticket holders. He already has their money. Kenwyn Jones, no new player announcement yet, having to save for the airfare maybe. Ollie Thompson, webcasts, can see the train of thought but still disagree. Away travel, simply cannot see how he came to that conclusion. Robert Newbolt, think it's all down to arena prices are up, Tony. Thinks it all down to arena prices are all up to Tony. It has to absorb cost and is struggling. And then finally, Marco Vietman, a familiar name there, says, what scares me is that this is the chairman of the Elite League talk about not wanting to spread the sport, keep it elite. I would just obviously say, on behalf of everybody, thank you very much for everybody that got in touch with us today. Paul put the tweet out this morning and we had a great response, so we really do appreciate that. And I suppose we will see what consequences this has, if any, for the Elite League and for Tony Smith himself as Elite League chairman. And on that, Glyn has been back in touch with us and just said that he doesn't think that Tony Smith really wants the hassle of being Elite League chairman anymore anyway. It's too much of a poison chalice for him. And just very quickly on that, Paul, I'm going to come to you just to finish this whole thing really, and what this has been generated from this. But doesn't this really boil down to now the way that Tony Smith has, as Elite League chairman, has talked and mentioned about, stopping fans going to other games of other teams, that we just need a a board of directors that have no involvement with any club, and it's just transparent, and these things we won't be talking about these things because they just won't happen.
Now we'll be talking about something else. In an ideal world, yes, that's the obvious. That's obviously what we want. But who pays for them? You know, you've got a bunch of owners now who that's one cost they don't have to pay out. But and until we get that, that nirvana you're talking about, stuff like this is unfortunately going to happen. You're always going to get, it's like football with the club versus country. You're always going to get that conflict of interest between the league and the individual team. And to be honest, one of the things that's come out of all this today, is that the statements that have been made by the league chairman. We've got a league chairman who is essentially saying, for all the number of times he says, he's not saying it. He's essentially saying, don't spend money with these 9 other clubs. And you look at the number of the clubs. To a large extent, rely on. Well, not rely, but the opposition fans. It adds to the atmosphere, them being there. It adds to the coffers, definitely. I mean, we've got a double-header weekend coming up in Edinburgh. How many? We'll be taking 200-300 at least people to that.
Yeah.
And what do Edinburgh do if they don't get 200-300 times? Well, it's actually 400 to 600 because it's twice. Times the entrance fee. They'll be looking at those fixtures and thinking we'll get a large chunk of money from that. Tony Smith has just turned around and said, "Sorry, I don't want you to have that." I mean, all right, he might be in a position where he needs it for his own club, and that's where that conflicts things. But for the chairman of the league to come out and say that, I think is extremely, extremely worrying.
Can I just jump in on that? Sorry, just a couple of things that kind of came back to me while Paul was talking. The thing, and this is not a good thing. I have heard interviews that Tony Smith has done in the past, and he actually makes the statement, "I'll just put my elite league chairman's hat on." So he thinks that he can separate himself out. He thinks that one minute he can make a statement as the Sheffield Steelers owner, and the next minute he can make a complete, he can make a different statement. Two matters might be completely unrelated,
yeah.
but he thinks in the space of 5 minutes he can make two different statements as two different people, and that's the problem. Now, the just sort of going on from that, and one thing, just to add to what Paul was saying, who's paying for an elite league chairman that's not Tony Smith? I mean, is the position that Tony Smith currently is taking, is it leveraged with the fact that he is the owner of the Sheffield Steelers, or is it an actual standalone position that he's getting paid for on top of it? I mean, is it? I suppose the question I'm asking really, and it's not a question we've got an answer for, is the position of elite league chairman a position that somebody who wanted to take it up as a full-time position could get paid a sustainable wage for?
Now, obviously, this is just my opinion on that. Is that I'm sure I've heard in the past people talk about the elite league chairman just being a role that it's just like a figurehead. It's not actually kind of an individual role like you were just mentioning there, Tina, where you'd get a set wage for it. It's any. I believe, and this is like I say, just what I believe, but I believe that any other of the owners or directors that are part of that elite league board, they could be known as the elite league chairman, and it's just that for the last few years it's been Tony Smith. So I'm led to believe that it could be Neil Black, it could be Scott Neal, it could be Todd Kelman, etc. So I'm not too sure that it is like you or I could apply to be the Elite League chairman. But I think what I'm trying to get to is that doesn't this just highlight that that's what it needs to be? And I know it's money, obviously, but for this sport to grow and this league to grow and build on the foundations that it's set, then we've somehow got to come up with a plan, a structure, or to be able to get to the point of where we can have an independent league chairman.
Yeah, absolutely.
But and what, just finally on one thing, because obviously we'll move on to something else. But just finally, I want to point you into the direction of a tweet from a good friend of the show and obviously an ex-Panther, and that man is Brock Wilson. Now, Brock, has been on this show before, has been on the podcast before, and he sent out a tweet earlier today regarding the Elite League and just his views and his opinions on and his experience of what he tells people about the Elite League. It's a fantastic, just from somebody who lives across the pond but has been in the Elite League, still talks about the Elite League, still thinks of the Elite League fondly, but it has a fresh idea on what needs to be done. Go and see him on Twitter.
I've just retweeted it on the Cat's Whiskers account.
Well, there you go. We'll send you to Brock's account first of all, because he does talk about the Elite League, on quite a few occasions. But his Twitter handle is @WilsonB25. Have a look at it, have a read of it, because it really is interesting. But as Jono has just said, you will be able to find that via the Cat's Whiskers TV Twitter handle. And maybe we will get Brock on one of the podcasts in the near future, just to talk about his views on what can maybe happen in the Elite League going forward. But thank you for getting in touch with us regarding that question. But we'll move on to the last couple of questions for this week's podcast, and let's talk about new fans, because as Bates has asked the question, as a new hockey fan, can you explain how the Continental Cup finals work and how the winner is determined? And why are the cup competitions, brackets challenge, such a strain and complicated formula? Why not straight knockout? So, Jono, I'm going to come to you for the Continental Cup finals explanation, because you were lucky enough to comment on the second round of that. So if you'd like to answer that section first for Asbates.
Okay, so first of all, there's a preliminary round in September where 4 teams enter, and they're from the more, say, lesser European hockey nations like Turkey, Hungary, that sort of thing. The winner of that group then goes into the second round, which is the one that Panthers were in. First off, in Jaca in Spain. So there was Spain, Spain, Romania, and Turkey.
Yeah, I was going to say, wasn't it Turkey?
Yes, because they qualified. So the winners of that went into the third round. There was 2 groups in the third round of 4, and the top 2 from each of those groups then went in to make the final, which we are in starting on Friday. So it is quite complicated, but a lot of countries have pulled out of the Continental Cup since the formation of the Champions Hockey League. So where some countries would send their champions or their cup winners to the Continental Cup, they're now generally in the Champions League. So it's not as shall we say as difficult to get to the final as it was, but it's still a hell of an achievement to get there.
And the winner will be determined by, it's obviously a mini league, and whoever tops that league will be the Continental Cup 2017 winners, I believe.
Yep.
So fingers crossed that will be the Nottingham Panthers, and I guess we'll see what happens. Paul, I'm going to come to you to answer the second part of that question on why are cup competitions such as a Challenge Cup such a strange, complicated formula. Why are they not just straight knockout?
Money. Straight knockout, you could end up, look at the FA Cup. If you get knocked out, if you get drawn as your first game as an away game and you lose, then you get off the gate still, don't you? But that's it. This way round, having this sort of the mini league to begin with, you are, teams are then, guaranteed 3, 4, 5, however many it is, games, and they can make the money that way. Then, of course, you've got the fact that teams like us have got limited ice availability, which means that we have to double some of them up, which makes it even more complicated. And the teams that don't win it then claim that that devalues the whole competition. And then we spend so much time doing that we've only got about a fortnight left for the playoffs, which means everybody claims that devalues that as well when they don't win it.
Okay. Well, as Bates, as a new hockey fan, hopefully Jono and Paul have explained a little bit about the competitions there, and obviously thank you very much for getting in touch with us. We very much appreciate you getting in touch and listening. So we have moved to our final question this week, and it comes from Door 14 Hockey, and they ask, what do you think has changed in British hockey over the last several years, and has it been for the better? Now, when this question came in, I think we all said on obviously our chat group that it's quite a tough one, isn't it? It's a thinker. It gets the brain ticking along. So, Andy, I'll come to you first. What do you think has changed in British hockey, and has it been for the better?
Well, I think ultimately we're slightly more sustainable, albeit, this was probably before today's statement. I think ultimately it's slightly more sustainable. I think certainly from the Elite League days, I think the quality is better. And I think currently at the moment, but I think that in a few years we'll see a decline when certain players start retiring. I think certainly over the last couple of years, the GB programme has been the best it's been for a long time as well. So I think all in all, it has been relatively positive. Sure, there's plenty of things that can be better. But I think currently at the moment, it's probably in a decent shape. Like I say, this answer was very much prepared before this morning. So... I could be completely wrong now, but I'd like to think that certainly, the standard has improved. You look at some of the players that we've got over here this season, and the past few seasons. The real quality players are coming over here now. And yes, we used to have 1 or 2, but now you're seeing teams have 3 or 4. Just in the one roster. So it's good to see. I think the conference system has helped in a lot of aspects. I think it's made teams competitive in their own conferences. And we're seeing new teams wanting to join and joining. Obviously, it was a shame to see Hull go, but to see Manchester come in so quick. And obviously Braehead are still relatively new, and obviously we've got Milton Keynes to look forward to next year. Okay. Tina, what do you think has changed in British hockey? What's the one thing that's changed for you, and was it a good thing or a bad thing?
Well, in terms of if it's going to be a quick answer, one thing that I would say has changed, and possibly I would agree with Andy that generally speaking, the Elite League seems to be on the up. But one thing that concerns me a little bit is the continual raising of the import limit. I think it's a bit dangerous. We're sort of pushing out, pushing out the any British talent, and something we're still yet to see is any kind of development league, which would be nice. So I think, generally speaking, the Elite League is looking good, but I think in terms of British development, I think we're very behind on that compared to other nations. I mean, other non-hockey nations. I think one thing that has struck me, I've been doing a bit of Continental Cup research, and I did a bit for the last couple of rounds. One thing that strikes me is that there's a fair few under 18, under 20s leagues, and in some countries there's an under 16s league. So it seems that there's quite a few other countries that are quite switched on to to the development of their native players. There's some leagues that even go so far as to they've reduced the imported players limit to, I think it's Italy have got a limit of 4 imported players. So when we're playing written, there'll be an awful lot of Italian names in there. I think they've got something like 2 Canadians and 2 Swedes and a spare Canadian or an American or Canadian that they've recently just signed. So there'll be a bit of rotating those 5 imports. So yeah, in terms of the British development, I think there's a lot of work to do. I think that may have even taken a step backwards.
Okay, Paul, obviously you've been watching British ice hockey for a long time. What's kind of changed for you in the last several years? And
it depends. It depends what you call several years, doesn't it?
Well,
I think I think about this. I mean, I've seen such a huge shift in quality over the many years, whatever it was you described, the time I've been watching. And I think that's the main thing. The level, the quality has always gone up. But I mean, to an extent, I don't know if I'm getting older or what, but it seemed to be more fun back in them days. Yeah, it was. I mean, we think it's a bush league now, but some of the stuff that used to go on. I mean, I still remember the days when Cardiff, the first team ever to turn up, where everybody got the same colour helmet, the same colour gloves, the same colour shorts. Almost every week you seem to get a team with at least one player who got a number that was put on the back of his shirt with stick tape. But I mean, yeah, things are a lot more professional. But I think it's I don't know, some of the fun maybe has gone. I mean, but going back to what Tina said about the increase in import rule, if you could, I mean, given what we were talking about on Monday, especially, you could argue that the way Manchester are going, they're going to become the saviour of Manchester Phoenix. That is, they're going to become the saviour of British ice hockey. Yeah. So they're going to play without any imports, but I wouldn't necessarily suggest that was a very good idea. Jono.
Jono, obviously, similar to Paul, you've been coming for many, many years. I mean, I've been coming for over 10 years now, and a lot's changed in that time. But for you, what's changed for you in the last few years? And would you agree it's been getting better?
The standard's certainly been getting better from the start of the Elite League to where we are now, and I think we're almost up to probably close to what the Super League levels of standard were. But I think back to when I first started watching for those first few years, and everything was the Heineken League or the National League up until 1995, 96 I think it was, and everything was under one umbrella. It was all under Ice Hockey UK, and now all the leagues are fragmented, and you've got 2 owners run leagues, and then you've got Ice Hockey UK looking after the junior programs, and nobody talks to each other, and there's no joined up thinking, and you could start the game as a 10-year-old and there's no clear path as where you'll get to if you want to become a professional hockey player. And I think that's the sad thing, is that everything is so fragmented, and that's different from when I first started watching. Even though it wasn't great and it probably wasn't run the best, it was still under one umbrella. And I think if everything came under one umbrella, we would see improvements. Maybe it would be to the detriment of some of the Elite League teams possibly, but it would be an improvement to the national programme and the junior programme, and there would probably be a path from the bottom right to the very top. And I think that's probably the biggest difference for me.
Okie dokie.
I'll tell you one thing though, Aaron. Just come back to that. I'll tell you one thing that has changed. Jono's a lot calmer than he used to be.
Easy.
But he has got less hair.
Well, no, not really.
Right, well, thank you very much, Door14 Hockey, for your question. Like I said, it's certainly got the brains ticking and thinking, so hopefully we've given you a few examples and opinions there. Now, we have actually had some questions in tonight live via Twitter, so we'll quickly answer them for you right now before we finish the show. And a couple from Max Artis. And just very quickly, I'll come across the board, but just kind of like a one-word answer, really. Brian McGrattan is on a 2-year deal. Do you think he will be back next year, or do you think he will do a Cam Janssen?
Janssen.
Cam Janssen.
Oh my God.
Bless the little ones.
Come on, I've got to keep that going, seeing that I did make that mistake last year at the playoffs. There's a video in the archive of Twitter somewhere, but there you go. So do you think he will do a Cam Janssen? Tina, do you think he'll be back, or Brian McGrattan means that he'll be back next year, or Cam that he'll just do it'll be a one-season wonder? Go.
Brian.
Okay, Andy.
He'll be back.
Okay, Paul.
Either.
There's always one. Jono.
If you're lucky.
He's on the university deal, so yes, he'll be back.
Oh, there you go. There's Professor Jono Bullard there with the answer. Another final question from Max, and it involves Big Ern himself again, saying, with Big Ern having a hand in bringing Jason Williams over, could we get excited for next year for who could be here? Now,
Can I jump in first on that one? Sorry.
Go on, Tina. What I would just say is, obviously, there's bigger names, Borderley, Cardiff. So, can we get excited for who we might see over here next season, especially in a Panthers jersey, shall we say?
Well, yes, I think that's probably what Max was getting at. But
yes,
last season, Chris Lawrence had a very good season, and we brought in a couple of his mates, and at times I think they have been a little underwhelming. I'll be honest, Jeff Brown is growing on me. He's putting some points up. He's punching some faces, and I like the effort he's giving. But I expected a bit more from Matt Carter, I think, specifically. So bringing in people is all well and good, but they've got to be able to do it on the ice as well as on paper. So the excitement will be based on puck drop of the first game next season.
Okie dokie.
I think for me, ultimately, for a league that doesn't have a scouting network, contacts and word of mouth is huge for this league, and so I think ultimately for anyone with the kind of resume that McGrattan had, I'm completely all for them speaking to people, getting the word out, and hopefully getting them over.
Okay, and I'm going to finish this question coming to somebody that gets excited for ice hockey and must be absolutely bursting at the seams thinking about the possibility of who might be wearing a Panthers jersey next season. So Paul Balm, are you excited about who might be wearing that Panthers jersey next year, seeing that the effect that Big Ern had on Jason Williams coming over?
I'm always excited.
Good, that's what I thought we would end the show on. So I would just like to say thank you very much for everybody that's been in touch with us either via Twitter this evening, or obviously giving us some content that we could talk about in regards to the Steelers statement and just general questions that you have sent in. Hopefully you've enjoyed it, and I would just like to say thank you very much to Tina Taylor,
TTFN,
Andy Haywood.
Anytime.
Paul Balm.
Bye.
And Jono Bullard.
Thank you very much. Goodbye.
This podcast will be back next week, but
tomorrow.
The Cat's Whiskers. Bear with, Jono. Bear with. This individual podcast will be back next week, but the Cat's Whiskers preview podcast will be back tomorrow, looking ahead, obviously, to a massive weekend for the Nottingham Panthers in the Continental Cup Super Final. And as you might have heard earlier on, Tina Taylor has done some research, because we were all lucky enough to receive a Excel spreadsheet earlier on today with all facts, etc., regarding our opponents this weekend. So listen to that tomorrow to find out all the information you will need to know.
The geek is sharing her information with the cool kids.
And we've also got an interview with Owen Bradley as well.
There you go.
Oh, he of the jumper, bless him.
You've got stats, you've got research, and you've got Owen Bradley. Please do join the Cat's Whiskers podcast tomorrow at 8:45. But for now, it just remains for me to say thank you very much for listening. Good night.